Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Sunday Messages. We are doing a PTA episode today. And also, I want to let you know that I have added a new segment to this. So, one of the things that I've noticed is that the flow of prayers is much less than it was last year or the year prior. So, what I have decided to do is actually add an analysis segment. And this is really for all things pop culture, contemporary issues, goings-ons in the world, whatever it is that you would like me to analyze on an energetic level. That is something that I'm adding to the mix. So some weeks we might do an advice column. Some weeks we might do an analysis segment. Maybe some weeks it's just going to be a couple prayers and tarot. But I wanted to add a little bit more to this because there's a lot of stuff that I do on Instagram that people love, but my podcast audience wasn't getting it. So I wanted to bring it here as well. So that being said, when I'm talking about an analysis of any kind, an energetic analysis, it could be something like you want me to review someone's archetypes or unpack someone's archetypes. It could be a court case or a murder case that you want me to look at. It could be something to do with an industry or TV show or celebrities. I don't know. If there's something that you want me to unpack, put it in that submission form. I've also updated the forms. So the link will be in the description box. It's going to be labeled podcast submissions. So there you can submit a podcast, you can submit something for the advice column, or you can submit an analysis segment request. So all of those will be on the same page. There's different forms for each. I made it super simple. So it's just your name and the message pretty much is all that comes through on those forms. So if you're interested, that is now available to you. It's going to live on my website as usual, and we are locked and loaded. We are ready to go. Also, another fun thing that I'm going to be doing through the end of the year is for everyone who is signed up on my newsletter that comes out on Sunday, I am going to be running a different sale every week, and it's going to be like a secret Santa only for those people on my newsletter. So if you've been wanting to get into a class of mine, one of the DIY classes or the master classes that I have available, keep your eyes peeled in my newsletter because that is where the sales will be located, and it's going to rotate every single week. So if you're not already signed up for my newsletter, I highly recommend that. And you get a reading every single Sunday. It's awesome. Definitely sign up for that. And yeah, that's all when it comes to housekeeping. Now let's dive into prayers. This is from Fran. And I am in full agreement for the highest good outcome for your court case in Austin. Full agreement for you to feel supported and relaxed through this entire process, and for you to know in your bones and remember that everything is always working out for you. Full agreement. And this next one is anonymous, but I am in full agreement for you to get a full-time job. Full agreement. I'm in full agreement for it to be easy, for it to be effortless, for it to be in alignment with you, for it to be a pleasant process, and for you to relax into knowing that it's already done, it's already yours. Okay, now we have the first submission for the analysis segment of this podcast episode, and this one is about Ryan Murphy. So I'm going to read the full thing and then I will unpack it for you. I'm curious about the other side of the parasitic industry that enables and rewards people like Ryan Murphy, that are notorious for creating toxic work environments and being a difficult and, dare I say, cruel person to work for. The fish rots at the head was what I would say about working on his show, because just about every department head and person in a leadership position was ruthless and only focused on themselves and their own success instead of that of the team, and making themselves look good was their only priority. So is Ryan Murphy's parasite feeding off that environment? So I know you're asking a lot of specific questions about the parasite piece, but I just want to be clear. Without actually watching him in action or being able to feel him or be in his atmosphere or watch him interact with somebody, I can't fully speak to any specifics. If I were to see a video clip of someone, I could tell you exactly what's going on when I'm reading them in real time. So for this particular discussion, I think it would be better to focus on environmental pieces. This is more of a systematic thing than it is an individual parasite thing. So it's actually backwards in this case. Instead of, is it the parasite that's doing this? That's almost never true. I would argue that it's never the case that there's just like this oogie boogie parasite that's roaming the streets and is gonna, capture people. That's not what's happening. It's the environmental elements of it create like a petri dish for parasites to exist. So it's the same with people. You only get to the point where you're really disconnected, your energetic immune system is really, really low, you're in a really bad position, and then you become susceptible to denser energetics, which is what I'm talking about when I'm referring to a parasite. In short, just for new people who are here, a parasite, the Catholic Church calls them demons. I think that's a bit heavy-handed, but I do use that language sometimes when I'm trying to make a point. But all it really is a thought form that humans make up. Then it gains enough energy to the point where it calcifies, it becomes extremely dense, and then you see things manifest in interactions, in 3D situations, in family systems, in work environments. So essentially, by the time you're dealing with what I'm calling a parasite, that has been a long time coming. There have been a lot of things that have contributed to that. Parasite is very late stage. There's a lot of them because humans have existed for quite some time now. But in a situation like this, it's going to help you more to understand the environment and the system and why that's conducive to these frequencies, and then how your personal experience dovetails with that and it turns into a clusterfuck. That would be the most helpful perspective that I could give you. So let me finish this question. Do you think someone with that status is conscious of their parasite and the harm they cause others? Because a lot of people in positions of power in this industry, entertainment, truly enjoy hazing their PAs and putting them through hell just for shits and giggles, while manipulating them with promises of getting into the union, even though they gatekeep the hell out of it. Women are the worst offenders of this, I've found in my experience. Would love to hear your thoughts around this. There are a few things that are dovetailing together that I think you're interpreting as being more parasitic than they actually are. Okay, let me explain. So the first piece is the nature of his work. So what I'm talking about is, have you seen his stuff? It's pretty dark. You've got to be pretty in touch with shadow in order to channel that much of it into a television program. The same would go for if you told me, I worked for Stephen King for a while and he was a real freak. He really said some fucked up stuff to me. It's like, yeah, it's Stephen King. Like, there is part of it where it comes with the territory of what kind of work you're putting out into the world is going to determine how closely you are going to be connected to that frequency. So if you're someone who is working on a horror genre show or novel or anything of the sort, you're going to have to play very, very close to those energetics. I've also discussed this about that show The Staircase. I can't remember his name, but it's this guy who writes crime thriller novels, found himself convicted of murder. Is that a coincidence? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's something that he's energetically intertwined with, and so it comes along with all of the work that he's doing, what he's putting out into the world. It just so happens that he was so immersed in it that it ended up coming to life. Look at The Shining. The Shining is another great example. Stanley Kubrick, kind of freaky dude, for sure. I love his films though. Oh, they're so good. But he tormented the shit out of Shelley Duvall in order to get some of those scenes. The reason why that movie is good is partly because the energy needs to be baked into the creation. You need to infuse it with the energy that you want to see play out on screen. So there is part of this that heavily is going to be influenced by the nature of his work, the style of his work, the genre that he focuses on. Now, that's not an excuse to abuse people, but I would also say, well, don't be surprised when you see those things either. I would say, is it right? No. Is it the standard that we want to hold? No. However, you're dealing with an artist who's going to say, it's for the craft. It's for the craft. We have to do it this way. It's for the craft. And so it's like, I really don't want to fight artists on their artistic process necessarily. So I would say when it comes to entertainment, it's going to be heavily influenced by the energetics because people are playing roles. They're getting into a creative mode where they're embodying the essence of whatever genre they're working in a lot of the time. So the same thing if you worked on a reality TV set, if you worked for the Real Housewives of Orange County and then said, all the girls are catty. I mean, yeah. Definitely. I totally agree. That makes sense. That adds up with all of the energetic stuff that is baked into the Real Housewives of Orange County. So if you're working in a particular genre, a lot of the time there's going to be leakage from that genre. Is it ideal? Probably not, but that's what happens when you have a lot of people embodying a particular energy and then holding a collective vision over time. The next element of this that is going to overlap, like if we had 3 circles that are making a Venn diagram, one is his style of work, period. The second piece is the entertainment industry and your belief systems about the entertainment industry and the beliefs that we collectively hold about the entertainment industry. So that is the second piece. The third piece of this is going to be your personal manifestation experience with all of this. And if you take those 3 pieces and put them together, then that's where you get the shit show that you experienced. So it's not a singular thing. It's not one-dimensional. That's the main point that I want to make here. It's not one parasite is running the show. I don't think that that's accurate. Now, when you're asking, is it the parasitic industry that enables and rewards people like Ryan Murphy? I would say no. I would say there's a lot of ways to manifest what you want, and some people do it through ruthlessness and brute force. You can manifest that way. That's the thing. You can be rewarded if you take that approach because you can use force. Is that conducive to a really pleasurable life experience? Is it going to make you a lot of friends? Is it going to give you really nourished relationships with your ride or die people? Probably not. Probably not. Now, if you're asking, well, how does he have really good retention when it comes to the actors? Well, I would say they probably really dig the roles that he gives them. And so they keep coming back because it enhances their acting career. But I digress. Don't think about any of the parasitic stuff when it comes to success. Those two things, I don't consider them to have anything to do with each other in the way that you think they do. Success has to do with belief, ultimately. If you believe your work is the best, you put it out into the world, you believe you're going to be successful, then things are going to find you. Things that are resonant with that are going to find you. So I would say his success probably comes from a really intense conviction and belief in himself. And then the genre of work, and so then it looks like, oh my God, he's a monster. That's what I suspect. Okay, so the thing about everyone in a leadership position was ruthless and only focused on themselves and their own success, blah, blah, blah. That is really clear energetics to me. So if you have someone who really isn't a good leader, then they're simply going to magnetize people who have a similar style. So if Ryan Murphy has this really ruthless, insatiable drive for success by any means necessary, right? Fuck the team. I'm going to get to where I want to go. If you want to be a part of it, hop on board. If not, fuck off. I would suspect that's probably his style. And again, that's not going to make for a pleasant work environment, but then you're also going to get people with that same drive and attitude that come to work with you. So that would just be the birds of a feather type of thing. Okay, the next question, do you think someone with that status is conscious of their parasite and the harm they may cause others? I don't think that Ryan Murphy is sitting around chatting about parasites like we are, unless it's for a show. I don't think that he's talking about it like this. Now, what I will say is there is such thing as what I call conscious possession. So that would be like, you know, those ghost shows where you have like a psychic medium who rolls into the place and they're like, my body is being taken over. Okay, when they do that, that's conscious possession. Like they're allowing themselves to be taken over by some other entity. Now, I'm not going to get into the mechanics of that right now, but that's a form of conscious possession. And I have also seen this with like criminals, serial killers. There is a certain rush that you can get, but what I will say is that takes a really, really, really long time to actually get to the point where you like it. I rarely see that. Rarely. So, is it possible? Sure, but that's not actually what I think this is in this case. What I think this is you probably have this dude with a really intense type A personality who's also a creative, so very into his own work, who knows it's good and people will eat it up and he'll get paid for it so he can plateau when it comes to personal relationships. He probably doesn't need to lift a finger or try at all. So a lot of the things that would be really, really helpful in terms of leadership, he doesn't have to do because he can ride off of status alone. So I think this is more of a combination of many factors. I'm not reading this as parasitic as much as I'm reading it as being unconscious and on autopilot in many regards. So that's how I would categorize it. I would say, well, you do, I know it's weird, but you want Ryan Murphy to be immersed in shadow. If we didn't have him doing that, he wouldn't be able to create what he does. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? And that's one of the things that I think creates the really frustrating experience working on his shows, because it comes with the territory. That's how I would categorize it. And no, I don't actually think he enjoys being consciously possessed. That's really, really late stage stuff. So that's not how I would put this. Now, the next piece that you asked about, a lot of people in positions of power in this industry truly enjoy hazing their PAs and putting them through hell just for shits and giggles, while manipulating them with promises of getting into the union, and even though they gatekeep it, blah, blah, blah. So first, never, ever, ever, ever listen to what someone else says about what you can do or will do. So it goes both ways. I wouldn't listen to anyone who makes promises, and I also wouldn't listen to someone who cuts me down either. The only thing that you can really trust is your own energy with this. If you want to be in a union, you can get into a union. Like, that is its own energy. It has nothing to do with anyone that you're working with. Now, if you're telling a story that says, I want to be in a union, but I can't because all of these women are gatekeeping it, you have just killed your own dream. You've just poisoned the energetics, and now you're telling a story that is strongly working against you. And I would nip that immediately. So where I think this started, I think there was one person who had an experience like this and then got together with a whole bunch of their friends and said, oh my God, I'm having this experience. Then other people, because they were holding that energy of the story, started walking around with it, creating those experiences, and then talking to each other about it. And this probably happened a long, long time ago. And then you had a speeding bullet train holding this narrative that started moving. This to me sounds like momentum, a negative story that has just generated a lot of momentum, and then you were immersed in it and probably bought into it and talked about it and just got really, really caught up in it. So this is the type of stuff where I would say you have to abandon the story and prioritize the energetics. As for the hazing, the most likely explanation would be the genre of the work. Once again, that comes into play. Then you have the generational factor, because hazing, the reason why hazing goes on and on and on is because of the generational component of it. Like, this is how it was for me, so this is how I'm going to make it for you. Or they have some glamorized idea of what hazing is actually going to turn into. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I could do a whole episode on the energetics of hazing, but those are just a few ideas that come to mind. It also depends on how people respond to it. So, for example, I don't respond well to hazing. My dad tormented me as a child, and so I'm not very reactive. So if someone tries to haze me, I turn into a gray rock. I get very bored and slow. I'm not fun to haze because I don't generate the type of reaction that people want. So if the hazing were to backfire, then it would have been nipped a long time ago. But I think that it is one of those situations that's more of a both and kind of thing. Also, one more thing that I want to mention is that it is possible to maintain healthy energetics in this type of situation and in this type of environment, but you can't do it if you're unconscious, and it's not easy to do. Because even if you are trying to actively create something different in an environment like this, a lot of the time you're up against so many different thought forms and programs and initial seeds that were planted and expectations based on hearsay. all sorts of things can make it more challenging to thrive in an environment like this, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It doesn't mean anything like that. It's just that the reason why you see trends is because most people are not like, we need to adjust our energetics in order to optimize this experience. That's generally not what people are talking about. Weirdos like me talk about that kind of stuff. So understand, you can create pleasant experiences everywhere you go, no matter the circumstances. That's irrelevant. It's just that there are certain places where there's a lot to override, and that's the part that ends up taking a lot of energy. So the thing that I want to tell you, if you feel like you're quote unquote fighting an industry, that's the stuff that's going to fatigue you. In order to navigate something like this, you would have to focus on creating pockets of time and space and creating in individual interactions, not even getting to the point where you're creating full-blown relationships, or like, you really can't focus too far out. You have to break it down into really, really bite-sized pieces and only create in that very, very small container. I'm sure some of you will benefit from that piece of advice. Okay, let's pull some cards for the week. Also, I have received quite a few submissions for the analysis segments, and there are some good ones coming up, seriously. So make sure that you subscribe, stay tuned, keep your eyes peeled over the coming weeks, because there's some really juicy stuff coming. Okay, let's see what you need to know for the week ahead. What's going on? What's coming up? Six of Swords. There's a lot of movement happening. And then we have the Eight of Cups. A lot of movement happening. What else? Now I'm curious. What else is coming up? And the Five of Cups. Interesting. Oh, here it is. Here's the message. Okay. So you have all this movement because the thoughts, the ideas, the belief systems that are actually interrupting and pulling you farther away from your desires have to go. You have to release those and move away from them. Now, again, this is one of those things where you can't battle it. You have a couple different options. You can transform things, right? You can shift them piece by piece. Sometimes just softening things will make it a lot easier and more palatable. Or you have to just create something completely new, completely different. You have to step away from it altogether. Those are generally the two options that you have available to you. So either way, I think you have a very good idea of the thoughts and beliefs and ideas that simply aren't working. Haven't worked before, they're not working now, and it's old and dusty. You have these paradigms where it's just like, these shoes don't fit anymore, this isn't working for me anymore, this thought isn't helpful, and it just has to go. So that's what the Five of Cups is. I'm seeing this is you recognizing I've been shooting myself in the foot. I keep saying that shit and then it's coming true. I'm making all of this happen. And because of that, I actually see that there's a reclamation this week. There's this big forward push from the standpoint of, I cannot keep doing this to myself. I cannot keep focusing on this myself. I can't look at this anymore because it's just creating problems. And ironically enough, it's that situation where it's like I have so much clarity that I can't ignore it anymore, and so I just have to put one foot in front of the other. Also, for some of you, I would say go listen to the doubt episode, because in there I talk about Jessica loves the Five of Cups. Oh my God, she loves telling me sad stories, all these bad things that are going to happen. She loves conjuring up telenovelas. She does all of that stuff. So I have to keep a really tight leash on that. You can't let it start operating you. You do have to have some mental boundaries with yourself about how deep you go into something. The reason why I'm seeing so much forward movement, because there's obviously these two cards where it's like these people are fleeing. That's the energy of it. You have fleeing energy this week. And it's because a lot of this stuff that's been going on with the Five of Cups is repetitive. It is so redundant. You've already thought these thoughts. You already know where they take you. You already know how they make you feel. You already know what the ultimate worst case scenario is. Yeah. Okay, brain. Enough. Like, that's what I mean by you have to have mental boundaries. Because if you don't, you will keep yourself trapped in a thought loop. So one of the things that I like to do for myself is skip to the end of the story. If your brain is like, oh my God, what if? What if this really awful thing happens? Okay, and then this really terrible thing happens, and then here would be the solution. And the brain goes, oh. But what if this really bad, awful, no good thing happens? Then this would be the solution in that worst case scenario. Oh, okay. But, and so on and so forth. So if you don't have mental boundaries and you're taking the bait every time brain presents something that frightens you, you're basically squandering all of your energy throughout the day. And I think you're done with that. I think you're like, there has to be a better way. Focusing on this isn't actually changing anything because I'm telling a sad story about it, or I'm focusing on it in a really negative, nasty way. And it's up and up this week. You're moving on. So enjoy that. Have fun. Keep a tight leash on your brain. Do yourself a favor. It's going to take some practice. And that is all that I have for you this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And of course, if you have prayers, something for the advice column, something for the analysis segment, something that you want me to unpack, go submit that. Put it in the queue. We have good stuff coming up. Make sure you stay tuned. The doors to Eden open on November 14th. So if you are interested in working with me more closely, if you want to be in a group container with me, this is how you do it. 2022 is going to be epic, amazing, wonderful, incredible, extraordinary, fantastic, beyond your wildest dreams. That's how it's going to be. So if you are ready to catapult yourself into a new paradigm, then make sure you get into Eden. That's all I have to say on that. I love you so much. Have an epic week. I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.